Okay, is it recorded?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Then come and sit down.
I'm going to come around to you, dear.
Come and sit down. Victoria, we don't know what we're doing. I scheduled this without April here and without Amy here. My friend Bobby is trying to pinch hit, and we hope we are recording. So here's going to start the program. Are you comfortable, hon?
I'm comfortable.
Now, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey there, everybody. How are you today? This is my dear long friend, Bobby Reno. Bobby Reno, how do you know Glendora?
I know Glendora from when I was a young little girl watching Satellite 6. And Glendora was the captain of her spaceship, which was very rare to happen with children's programs back in the late 50s, early 60s, 1960s. And so she was the role model. And that's how I first met Glendora.
She said that Glendora taught the world that little girls could grow up and be captains of spaceships.
That's right. An inspiration.
Now tell a story about Bosco.
Oh, Glendora would do the commercials for Bosco chocolate syrup mix, and she would mix it up with in the milk and so forth. And when my mother bought the chocolate syrup, I demanded that she mix it just like Glendora did on Satellite 6, and she did.
Now, how many years ago was that? 68, 70?
No, I think it was late 1950s. It was.
Oh, I know the year it was, honey. It was 1956 to 1962. I know the year.
Yep.
Yeah, I do.
Yep.
Now, tell the people where the town of East Greenbush is.
The town of East Greenbush is located across the river from the capital city, Albany, New York. And the town of East Greenbush used to be part of a larger town called Greenbush, which incorporated what is now the city of Rensselaer, town of East Greenbush, town of North Greenbush, and parts of the town of West Sand Lake.
Go over that again, honey.
It's just across the river from Albany, New York, right across the Hudson River from Albany, New York.
And did that include Rensselaer?
Yes. Well, parts of the city of Rensselaer, other parts of the city of Rensselaer were called Bath, B-A-T-H, Bath.
And Bobby, tell us a little bit about Stephen Rensselaer and all.
Stephen Van Rensselaer was the patroon, and the patroons were Dutch immigrants. They owned basically what is Van Rensselaerville, which incorporated parts of Albany County right down through to Columbia County. It was a lot of land back in the area at the time of the patroons.
It sounds as big as the state of Massachusetts. Maybe it's as big as the state of Connecticut.
It's quite large. Quite a large area.
And now, what was the patroon system? Where did they get the authority? From the Dutch?
From the Dutch, right. And what they basically did was they were renters. They rented out their farmlands to farmers, and the rent sometimes was in produce.
The patroon rented it out.
The patroons rented it out, yeah.
Now, you know, folks, that the Dutch settled all along the Hudson River Valley, all the way up from Manhattan, right, Bobby?
Yeah.
And all the way up as far as what?
Oh gosh, up and that I'm not quite familiar with how far it went up, but it went up through Albany County, up into Albany County.
Yeah. And you know, and there's still Dutch around here, right?
A lot of Dutch heritage here.
And, you know, Van Rensselaers and Van Auckens and Van Burens.
Right.
In fact, I have a saying up here that if you're not Dutch, you're not much.
Well, one of the first churches, of course, was the Dutch Reform in Albany called First Church. First Church.
One of them was in Kinderhook, too.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's what... now, East Greenbush, you're going to tell us about something that happened around the Civil War, about Edmonia Lewis.
Oh, before the Civil War.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
tell us.
Edmonia Lewis was a young woman. She was of African American. Her father was purportedly from Haiti, and her mother, Chippewa, part Chippewa, part African American. And Edmonia Lewis was born in what was then Greenbush in 1844. And she was born free, and she eventually became, in the latter part, through the Civil War and into the latter part of the 1800s, a very world famous sculptor.
Tell us about what's in between, honey.
In between, okay. She lost her parents. Well, she had an older brother, Samuel. Samuel was, we're guessing, was about 10 years older than her.
Was any of them a slave?
No. And Samuel and Edmonia lost their parents when Edmonia was quite young. And they moved to the Chippewa reservation called Ojibwa in Canada. Chippewa and Ojibwa, same tribe. Near Toronto, called the Credit River Reserve. And she was raised by her aunts, her mother's sisters. And she thought of herself as Native American in the early part of her life. Her brother Samuel, when he became of age, left the reservation and went west, out towards Montana. And he went out there to dig gold. And Samuel was successful. And he wound up settling in Bozeman, Montana. We're talking about 1850s now. He settled in Bozeman, Montana, and he became a successful businessman.
Ooh.
And he would send money home to Edmonia to help her with her education.
Oh, how do you spell her name, dear?
Edmonia, Edmonia. And she enrolled in a boarding school in Albany called the Captain S.R. Mills. Now, we still have not been able to find out what this school was, where it was, who Captain S.R. Mills was, and so forth. It's been very elusive to find out that information. And she stayed there for approximately 4 years, at which time then she enrolled in the New York Central School out in McGrawville, which was a Baptist college preparatory school. And
Where
there,
is that? What town, honey?
McGrawville.
Where's
That's
that?
a little bit southwest and a little bit southeast between Buffalo and Rochester.
Wow.
And she went there. She did very well in her studies. I have a copy of her report card. But she was discharged. She stated she was discharged for being too wild. She was still considered herself under the influence of her Native American culture and so forth. I kind of question that. I'm wondering if there was, again, some racial discrimination there, but I have no proof of that.
Yes.
And at that time, we're talking now 1858, somewhere around there, Samuel enrolled her in Oberlin College.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, and she started there in the ladies' course.
Now, tell the folks a little bit about Oberlin.
Oberlin College it's out in Oberlin, Ohio, and it was established about 1833, and it was one of the first, if not the first, college that allowed people of color and women to attend college.
Wow.
Very, very, very progressive for its time.
Double whammy.
But not perfect, okay, in that area. And it was at Oberlin where Edmonia started to identify more with her African-American culture. And it was also at Oberlin where she learned that she had a talent for art. When she was with the Chippewa, she learned to make beads and products like moccasins, beads, belts, and so forth. But at Oberlin, she learned that she could draw, she had a talent for art,
Ooh.
and an interest in art.
Ooh.
However, Oberlin was a dry town, which meant the college was dry, and they had rules. There was to be no fraternization without being escorted between the two sexes and so forth. And when at Oberlin, Edmonia made friends with two white girls. And these two white girls broke the rules. They went on a sleigh ride in the winter with two young men who were reportedly sailors. And at one point, they were given some spiced wine, which was also breaking the rules. They were not chaperoned. They had spiced wine. And they got sick. In fact, they got very sick. They almost died. And they accused Edmonia of putting some poison. The poison would have been Spanish fly.
What was their motive?
That's the question. Spanish fly is an aphrodisiac. Why would Edmonia do that? And it sounds like something more of their escorts did, okay? And Edmonia was arrested. But before she could have a hearing, some vigilantes dragged her out of her residence in the winter and beat her and assaulted her, almost to the point where she died. Almost died, I should say.
Oh.
And but
Where was her day in court? Where was her?
Well, eventually she got her hearing, and John Mercer Langston, a prominent African-American lawyer, who was also a graduate of Oberlin himself, he defended her, and he exonerated her.
He did?
He did, and she returned to her studies. Now, the two white girls never went back to college. Edmonia went back, but she was still harassed. And Oberlin, fearing this bad publicity, did not renew her for her final semester. So she was denied her degree. And after she moved to Boston, she went out to Boston, which was basically known as a abolitionist city. And she started her sculptor study with Edward Brackett. Edward Brackett was the man who sculpted a bust of John Brown. And he sculpted a bust of John Brown.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's where she learned her beginning learning how to sculpt. And she stayed with him, worked with him until this was 1862 to 1865.
Civil War.
At which time, Civil War was in full swing. At which time she moved to Rome, Italy.
Rome.
And Rome is where she felt she could advance her study in sculpting, and she could also avoid the discrimination that was prominent here, which in part she did succeed in doing that. And she created very, very beautiful work. Most of it she sent back to the United States for exhibition, and she came back. Toward the latter part of the 1800s and into the early 1900s, her style of sculpting became not popular anymore. That was neoclassicism. And Art Nouveau was moving in, and so she was not selling her work as much. And for some reason, she moved to Paris and then to London, England. We don't know for sure at this point why. And there she kind of faded into obscurity, where she died in 1907 of Bright's disease, and she's buried in St. Mary's Roman Catholic Cemetery in London.
And did you have trouble disinterring or finding where she was buried?
I did not. Dr. Marilyn Richardson, she's the most prominent authority on Edmonia Lewis. She's a retired MIT professor. She is the one who found where Edmonia is buried. She hired a lawyer over in London to track down Edmonia's will and her burial certificate.
Really?
And the grave was in terrible condition. So in 2017, I did a GoFundMe, and it was successful, and we restored her grave.
You did?
Yeah.
Who paid for this? The town of East Greenbush?
Mostly people from the area of East Greenbush donated very
God
generously, and we were able to do it. I worked with the E.M. Lander Company in London, which was a wonderful company to work with, very easy. They did everything well, and they did it on time. They were very, very good to work with.
God bless you, Bobby Reno.
Thank you. And
God bless you. Now, what did you...
Speaking of Oberlin, if I may, in 2021, I wrote to Oberlin College and asked them to consider giving Edmonia Lewis an honorary degree. They wrote back, and of course they had to put it for a committee. And it took about a year before I heard back.
Oh, really?
When I heard back, they decided, the reason it took so long was they decided not to give Edmonia Lewis an honorary degree, but to give her her actual degree. And because this is very unusual to do, they wanted to make sure that everything was correct. And if I can get Glendora to show here, this is the degree. I think they can see it.
Okay, now wait just a second, honey. All right, I know there's a good picture of that. All right, show it. Tell people about it, honey, the degree.
That's the actual degree that Edmonia Lewis would have received in 1862 from Oberlin College, and it is for the ladies' course. Oberlin College last year at their June commencement, that's the first thing that they did was they said they wanted to right a wrong. President Umbar of Oberlin College presented this degree to the president of the Student Senate. I was invited to attend, but I could not due to the ill health of a family member. And but they allowed me to do a video, which I did, which was played on the commencement website. But that's the degree, and then afterwards they sent me the degree. Oh. Now, Edmonia doesn't have any living descendants.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Right. No,
now, where do you keep this
in my office at the town hall of East
At the town hall? Right. In a display case?
It sits right now. It sits on top of a file cabinet.
Okay. Okay. Now, Bobby, you have done splendid work, and I'm thrilled with it. And Bobby is the town historian, aren't you, Bobby?
Yes.
She's the town historian of East Greenbush, Rensselaer County, New York. Albany Capital District. Now, let's get on to what happened big after that.
After that, I had I can't quite remember how it came about. I must have seen something on an envelope, a stamp coming in on an envelope, which was a commemorative stamp. And I looked, I thought, try to get one for Edmonia.
Good girl.
And so I went on the U.S. Postal Service website, found out that there's no actual application to do this to the stamp committee. You just write a letter, and you basically explain the person why they should get an honor of a commemorative stamp. I believe the person has to be passed away. I think it might be 3 years, but I'm not 100% sure on that if my memory is clear. So I did. I wrote the letter, and I did get support from the Rensselaer County Legislature and the town of East Greenbush to support this request. And
how long was your letter, sweetheart?
Oh, just about maybe 3 paragraphs. It was one page.
Really?
I think it was one page. I didn't want to get into too much, too long a letter with it. And it took, I think it was like maybe a month later, I got a letter back, and they said they were putting it before the committee. And then I didn't hear anything for quite a while. I understand it's a long procedure if they decide to go ahead. And if they do, they become very secretive about it anyhow. And then finally...
Why?
I think they're doing their research. If they're going to do it, they want to do a research, and they want time for this. And I found out that they had actually contacted Professor Richardson, but she couldn't tell me that they contacted her. And so toward the end of, I think it was October, November of 21, where I got a call from Dr. Richardson, and it was kind of not a call, rather an email. It was kind of cryptic. She said, something big is coming.
Wait, who is Dr. Richardson?
She's the professor she's the retired MIT professor, who's the foremost authority of Edmonia Lewis.
Oh, okay.
And it was kind of cryptic, and she couldn't tell me until finally the post office contacted me and said, yes, we're going to release it at the end of January 23 of 2022. And
it's only 6 months ago.
No, 2022, not 20.
Oh, a year and 6 months.
And the stamp came out. And the stamp, I guess, is doing pretty well. It's still available online.
Am I
holding? Turn it around.
It is still available online?
Yeah, gotta turn it around. There you go. There you go. Oop.
Oh, tell me. I'm holding it right?
Yeah.
Okay, dear.
That's the stamp.
Let's look at this a long time. Hey, Google, call the post office, please.
Calling post office Heather, mobile.
I'm going to call and see if she has it on stock.
They probably don't now at this age. They got the new ones out now.
What a story, huh? And Bobby, you deserve so much applause. They're busy, folks. They'll answer in a minute. And I won't tell any post office
Your
folks.
call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system. 51892923557 is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hey, Postmaster Heather. Do you have any stamps for Edmonia Lewis? Ask her. You ask her, Bobby. This is Bobby Reno from the she's town historian.
Hi, Heather.
Of East Greenbush.
This was a commemorative stamp that came out in January of 2022. I know it's still available online, but Glendora's wondering if it's still in some of the branch office that she can pick some up if she needs some.
Yeah, I want a whole lot of them, honey. A whole lot of them, if you can get them. All right, sweetheart? I'll have to tell you a joke. Wait a second. Why did the man quit his job at Midas Muffler? Why did the man quit his job at Midas Muffler? Do you know, Bobby?
I have no idea.
It was exhausting.
That's
okay, Heather. Call me, honey. Bye-bye.
Bye, Heather.
Well, that's wonderful. Is that the end of the story, honey?
That's pretty much it.
Oh, I'm so proud.
It's an ongoing story in the life of Edmonia Lewis.
I'm so proud of you, dear.
Thank you.
So, I want to thank
That's
Bobby.
a compliment coming from you.
At 95 years old, honey. I want to thank Bobby Reno, who is the historian for the town of East Greenbush, which is in Rensselaer County, and it's almost juxtaposed to Albany, right?
Right.
And for this grand goodness of God is what it is, folks. You saw everywhere the goodness of God. You saw in all that cruelty and all that mistreatment, you saw love. You saw love come through. And you saw love end in the beginning and end in the ending, right, dear?
That's right. Love for all people.
What, dear?
Love for all people.
Yes, all people.
Yeah.
All of us. Together, today, this very moment. Now, you close out. You can have the last word, honey. Is there anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think that first I want to thank you for inviting me to talk about Edmonia Lewis. I sat here thinking that, of course, back when you were doing Satellite 6 and being a woman in command and celebrating that women could do something of leadership, and we're here celebrating a woman who, in the difficult times of the 1800s, she went forward into a career where she went through obstacles
You
of
have reached the
discrimination.
maximum time permitted for recording your message.
Hey,
If
Google.
you're satisfied,
Thank you. Excuse us.
Just doing my
Go
job.
ahead.
To erase and
Google says she's
re-record,
just doing
press
her
3.
job. Excuse us, Bobby.
Yeah. And but I think that with
you're
celebrating
satisfied with the
a
message,
woman,
Hey,
press 1.
Google,
To
stop.
listen-
Go Go ahead, hon.
We're celebrating a woman in the latter part of the 1800s who fought through challenges of discrimination and gender discrimination, racial discrimination, to succeed. And but she was forgotten, and now she's forgotten no more.
There you are. There you are.
Yep.
Google's a woman too, you know.
You did what?
Google is a woman too.
Google's a woman?
Yeah.
Oh, was she talking? Yeah.
She's female.
Yes, she is.
All right, folks. Bobby, I'll tell you the joke about Harry said to his mother, I don't want to go to school today. And his mother, he says, the kids don't like me. The principal, the custodian doesn't like me. The teachers don't like me. I don't want to go to school today. And his mother says, well, you are going to school today. You have much to learn. You have much to offer. And besides, you're 45 years old and the principal. Okay, folks, thank you. Thank you for being with us and caring and sharing. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Now, would you go and turn it off, honey?
I'll try.
I hope.